Hey everybody, Smart Silver Stacker here. I wanted to make a quick video to ask all of you a question. And the question is, has the dollar already lost its world reserve status? And this is not a question that I know the answer to, and I'm sure a lot of you watching are probably shaking your heads and saying, no, it hasn't lost its world reserve currency status. What are you talking about, Smart Silver Stacker? But I'm not so sure about that, because I think that there is going to be a line of some sort, a line in the sand, if you will, a red line, that we're going to cross at some point. When we do, it means there's going to be no turning back, and the dollar will have essentially lost its world reserve currency status, although at the time we may not realize it. And I think that looking back from, say, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years down the line, looking back from the future, we're going to see that event. And we're going to be able to say, like, hey, okay, that is the time basically that the dollar lost its world reserve currency status and it ceased being the primary currency of the world. I don't necessarily know that we are going to realize it at the time that we are crossing that line. And who knows, maybe that line was crossed on February 24th with the Russian invasion of Ukraine. And I'm not saying that that is the case, but I also don't think that it is outside the realm of possibilities. There are a lot of threats to the dollar status out there. I mean, our own behavior aside, we're pretty much doing a pretty good job of debasing the dollar on our own. But now, clearly, Russia is attempting to wage its own form of economic warfare back against us. After we unleashed all of these sanctions on Russia, Vladimir Putin has decided to try to turn the tables on us. And to some extent, he's been successful because the ruble is now trading at a higher level than it was pre-invasion. So all of the negative effects on the Russian currency from those sanctions seem to be done now. The Russian energy minister, I think his name is Navalny, he was recently talking about accepting gold and hard currency as payment for Russian oil and gas. And this is important because, remember, Russia is the biggest exporter of oil in the world. So what they take in payment for their oil is pretty important. And this guy Navalny, he said that they are no longer interested in accepting dollars as payments. Now, of course, this is Russia, a country that essentially were involved in some kind of a renewed Cold War against, certainly a proxy conflict in Ukraine that we are, supplying the Ukrainians and assisting them fighting directly against the Russians. So, they're not going to be talking up the dollar, of course, but the fact remains that if this trend of settling international oil payments in a currency outside of the dollar, something other than the dollar, Navalny was saying gold or other national currencies possibly. So, if he's selling oil to China, they might accept yuan as payment. If they're selling oil to India, they might accept the rupee as payment. And that would be a serious threat to the petrodollar system if all of these other countries start to get on board. And it's kind of understandable why they might, because at this point, why do they need to be settling everything in US dollars when they see how vulnerable holding the US dollar makes you to sanctions? If you don't toe the line that the US wants you to, you might find all of your currency reserves are seized and you're cut off from international payments. So it kind of makes sense for these other countries to at least have some options to use other than the dollar, just in case, they become politically at odds with the United States. But if Russia is successful in getting these countries to pay in their national currencies or even in gold, that will be a huge blow against the dollar, and it will mean that the Russian economic warfare strategy is working. And, what will also be a very significant red line or line in the sand that we could cross is not just if the Russians or other nations begin accepting payment in something other than dollars, that would be a big deal. But if we see them price oil in something other than US dollars, so if they say, and I don't know, I'm not doing the math in my head real well here, but let's say they say an ounce of gold will buy you 20 barrels of oil. If they did something like that, that would really be significant if oil was being priced in an instrument other than dollars. And I don't know if they would price it in national currencies. It kind of makes sense that if a country wanted to sell oil to a variety of countries and just name one price, they could name it in gold, because gold trades a pretty liquid way against all these other national currencies. So, if Russia wants to get any particular currency, they could always sell their gold for it. But honestly, at this point, a country like Russia, they're probably going to be fairly wary of holding significant amounts of foreign currencies. So why not just price everything in gold and take payment in gold? Clearly, Russia and China know the advantages of having gold as an anonymous international currency that's not linked to one country and has no counterparty risk. That's why they've been stocking up on it. And it isn't just Russia. Like I mentioned, it is China too. China has been stockpiling gold, and you can bet that this conflict could absolutely evolve to drag China into it. I mean, eventually we are going to come to conflict. We're going to come to blows with China over Taiwan. That's almost guaranteed. And with the way this conflict is progressing in Eastern Europe, the fact that it could escalate at any moment, it seems like, I think China's just looking for their opportunity to pounce. And if we get dragged into a war in Europe, that would be a great opportunity for China. And as we've seen, these hot wars are immediately followed by economic warfare, or immediately preceded by economic warfare, one way or the other. But, if China makes a move on Taiwan and we start acting like we might intervene, they might threaten to liquidate all of their treasury holdings. And, that would be an economic disaster for the U.S. Now, it wouldn't be good for China either, because maybe we just say, hey, we're not going to honor those treasuries or those U.S. debt instruments, and that's fine. But that, one, means China's not going to be buying them anymore. And two, we depend on China for a lot of things. We depend on them for a lot of manufactured goods, for pharmaceuticals. They make everything over there in China. That's where they make all the iPhones and smartphones. So there's lots of things that the U.S. needs from them. And there's things that China needs from us as well. They get a lot of food from us. I think they import a lot of soybeans and various things. And, they require us to be a market for their goods. But two things. The Chinese are developing their own middle class. People in China are becoming more affluent, and that means they don't need the U.S. as much for a market for their goods anymore. They can sell those things domestically. And also, China, while having a trade embargo against the U.S. or engaging in economic warfare against the U.S., it would be painful for the Chinese economy, it's true, but it would also be massively painful for the U.S. economy. And the thing about Russia and China is their populations are a little bit better equipped and better conditioned to deal with hardship, I think. Just look at the 20th century. Yeah, we had the Depression in the U.S., but aside from that, it's been pretty good times, pretty affluent, lots of freedom, lots of economic opportunity, at least by comparison to places like China and Russia. They were dealing with Mao Zedong and Stalin. I think that there's just a tougher mindset over there, honestly, especially relating to economic things. And even if there isn't something about their national character and national psychology that means that people can endure hardship better than, say, people in the West who have had it a little easier, there's also the fact that their governments, they don't have to deal with an election cycle. Here in the U.S., politicians have to worry about the short-term economic opportunity and how that's affecting people's moods. Whereas in Russia and China, they can really take a much longer view. And if people do get upset or they start, having unrest as a result of any economic hardship that's imposed on their domestic population, they have the means to crack down. I'm sure the U.S. has some things in place where they could crack down too if they needed to, but not the way that China does. They don't have cameras on every street corner. They don't have facial recognition. They don't have the social credit score already set up. China is ready to throw down if they need to. They can lock their population down real easy, as we saw in 2020. Welding people into their homes to make them comply with quarantines. So, you didn't see that in the U.S. And, for good reason. We've got the Second Amendment and all that stuff as well. But the whole point is that people in the U.S., the population here, can make government accountable when things get bad a lot faster than China could. And in a total war scenario, that actually could be a benefit to China. It might make the U.S. more likely to capitulate when threatened with economic hardship, as opposed to Russia and China that wouldn't really have to worry about that as much. And, who knows? Maybe this conflict will not escalate. Maybe we'll get a peace deal, or the conflict will end soon. God knows. I hope it does, just for the sake of all the people who are suffering there. The people who suffer the most during this geopolitical chess match are the people on the ground who are just like you and me, who are now having to deal with their homes being destroyed and they're being turned into refugees. So, that's terrible. Maybe things will end quickly and we'll get peace, but even if we do, the world economy is never going to be the same after this. If they sign a peace deal tomorrow, do you think Russia is all of a sudden just going to say, hey, pay us in dollars again, no problem? And are we going to just unfreeze all of the Russian assets and say, hey guys, thanks for signing the peace deal. Ukraine's not going to join NATO, and here's all of your Forex reserves back, and we're just going to resume our economic ties the way they were? That's not really in the cards, I don't think. And we're going to be seeing fallout from this conflict and these events for years, possibly for decades. It's really going to become noticeable soon, I think. Again, I think there's kind of a normalcy bias in the West. Hey, we just lived through a pandemic. We can get through this. But there is a developing food crisis. There is massive inflation in store for the U.S. And if the dollar really has lost its status as the world reserve currency, and I'm not saying it has necessarily, but again, I'm asking a question to all of you. What do you think would be the line in the sand when we can say, hey, it's official, the dollar has lost its world reserve status? I would really like to know what you think. So let me know in the comments down below. But if we do see that, the standard of living in the U.S. is going to decline precipitously because we've been living on debt for decades, and we have been exporting fiat currency and importing things, manufactured goods from all around the world while we send them IOUs. And that could come to an end. So, it's not all doom and gloom. If there is a crisis, there could be opportunity as well. If you get some of your savings into hard money assets like gold and silver, these things could benefit. They could appreciate if the dollar loses a lot of purchasing power, and maybe some of the other assets that we see out there, real estate, homes, equities, stocks, if any of that stuff survives any kind of a market meltdown or a massive shift in the monetary paradigm, there might be some deals out there for stackers and folks who have hard money to deploy when the time is right. And, hopefully if we do see something like that, maybe we'll get some different leadership here that will make the difficult moves that are needed to get our economy moving again. So I don't want to be all doom and gloom. Maybe we need the dollar to lose its world reserve status in order to get the U.S. economy moving again. I don't know. Let me know what you guys think. And if you like this video, please do give it a big thumbs up. And, while you're at it, why not subscribe to the channel? And if you want to see some more videos about the economy and gold and silver and the dollar, then go ahead and check out the videos that are popping up on your screen right now. And I will catch you next time. Thank you all very much for watching. Smart Silver Stacker out.